Okay, let's jump into right-wing populism in Germany and how to counter it by radical politeness. Radical politeness is one of our slogans, or is our slogan of KLEINER FÜNF. And I will explain to you later what we mean by it and how it works for us. I was asked to not only just jump into right-wing populism and the strategies of KLEINER FÜNF, but actually give an idea on what the AfD, the right-wing populistic party in Germany, is, what they're doing, and how the state of right-wing populism is in Germany, what their topics are. So that's why I'm starting now with basics on right-wing populism in Germany. Right, so the four things is: what is right-wing populism, what is the situation of right-wing populism in Germany and Europe, as we just had the European elections, which strategies can help in order to handle right-wing populisms, there are a couple, and what should be taken into account when choosing a strategy. Okay, what is right-wing populism? The problem I have every day is that there are so many people talking about populism in Germany. The word populism is, I would not say overused, but maybe yes, it's overused. And the most problem I have is that it's not accurately used. So for example, my sister called me a couple of days ago because we had this YouTuber affair. You know, there's a very young YouTuber with blue hair who took a video of himself talking about how bad our conservative party is, about climate change, etc. And my sister called me and she was like, it was so populist. And I was like, no, it's not. Referring to the scientific academia explanation of populism, it is not populistic. Maybe you mean other words. So I'm just saying, like, there are so many things people associate with populism or right-wing populism, which is, for example, a battle cry, a deteriorative judgment, a right-wing, but not extreme. It's only right-wing populist. It's not extreme yet. Extreme rhetoric, political strategy, breach of taboo, or right-wing is an idea of man and woman, and populism is rhetoric. So there are so many different ideas on what right-wing populism is. I myself and KLEINER FÜNF, we refer to one definition, which was made by Jan Werner Müller, a professor from Princeton University. He wrote an essay which was called "What is Populism?" A couple of years ago, I think 2016. And he mentions two criteria which are very important in order to define something as populistic. He says the first thing is, populism is a specific political idea according to which a morally clean and homogeneous people, das Volk in German, is facing an immoral, corrupt and parasitic elite. So the idea of a dichotomy of two groups, clean, homogeneous people and the bad, immoral elite. This is one, if that is the picture of the world, of the country we're talking about, then this is a criteria for someone being a populist. The second criteria, he says, populists claim we are the people. What they mean is we and only we are the representing the people. This is, for populists, however, a solely moral and not an empirical statement. So if these two criteria come together, science by Jan Werner Müller and others who followed him say it is a populist, and I think it's quite important to name a definition in the beginning in order to know what we're talking about, what we mean. Another interesting thing, by the way, is that Jan Werner Müller says if these two criteria meet, it is an idea of anti-pluralism, so the idea of there is no plurality or there should be no, and this is against democracy, because democracy has the idea of there are different people, right, and different ideas. Thus, he says, populists are anti-democratic. So this is the argument he gives to say that the AfD, for example, in Germany is anti-democratic. This is a thing, I hope you can see it actually, but maybe I'm just going to read it out. I think it's very important, when I'm saying right-wing populists, of course I'm talking about the German right-wing populism now, follows a logic, and this logic is always the same. It does not matter on which part of their political program they are arguing with. It always follows the same idea, the same logic we will go through now together, and this logic, I'm telling you now already for the strategy maybe later, if you're not able to break that logic in a discussion with someone who favors the ideas of right-wing populism, you lost. If you're not able to break the logic he or she is going through, you don't have a chance to actually slide through and get out to another logic. So the logic consists of, as we just saw by the definition of Jan Werner Müller, there's two groups. There's the us, which is the homogeneous people, and there's a them, the other, the elite or the foreigners. So it doesn't matter if it's the refugees who are coming in or Angela Merkel as the head of the elite for the right-wing populists. There's like these two worlds. So what's happening now in the logic of right-wing populism in Germany is that them, the others, represented, for example, by Angela Merkel, is threatening the us, the people, for example, by so-called foreign infiltration. So the naturally and logic response they have to give for the people is to protect by a headscarf ban, let's not interfere our culture, closed borders, there are too many people coming, we have to log up. So this is just an example by a couple of words on how the logic functions. There's a them, which threaten, there's a us, which are threatened, so we are going to protect. How does right-wing populism work about that? It devaluates groups of people and questions the constitutional law here in Germany. It influences the perceived reality through linguistic pictures, which are an essential part of right-wing. So the language, the linguistic rhetoric is an essential part of our right-wing populists here. And we will go through the language they use later on the next slide. The third point is they threaten our democracy by anti-pluralism, as I just referred to in the definition. And they want to go back instead of move forward. For example, coal mining. You know, everybody in Germany now is talking about coal mining, how it should end, and how, I told you before in my think tank, we work on something called structural change. So the structural change of words, of environment, of regions, and they're proclaiming the opposite. They want to go back to there. They want to go back to the traditional image of the family. We all know what that means. And the D-Mark, you know, the currency we had in Germany before the euro. They're also asked to go back to that. So there's a lot of going back in their program and a little of moving on. Those are some of the quotations you see here now of how they speak, of the language. But I will go into the language now in the next slide, and I think it's very important that we really understand, because it's an important tool of right-wing populism in order to get their ideas and their pictures and their framing, actually, the wording, the framing and the associations they have into the people and their voters. So there are 5 major topics what right-wing populists in Germany talk about. First one, and the winner always, is asylum and migration. And typical words they use talking about that topic is invaders, parasites, wave or flood. Maybe you have that in your language as well. Oh yeah, I see a lot of nodding. Right, and this refers to the picture I showed you before, right? If there's a wave and a flood, what is the logical thing you have to do? You have to build a wall in order not to get flooded, right? So this is like the idea behind this wording. The second big group of topics they talk about is culture and identity, claiming that the homogeneous people, I told you before, have the same culture and idea, and they're invaded by others. So they say there's a dominant culture. We've been asking all last summer in 2018 what that dominant culture is. Everybody was like, I don't know what that is. I mean, especially us here in Berlin, we don't know what that should be, but also in different places of our country. There are words they create and they use it in a very negative setting. For example, Alice Weidel, one of the heads of the right-wing populist party, said, Kopftuchmädchen, headscarf girls. And it's a label, right? It's a label you get. You're a headscarf girl, so you cannot be something else. Or a sheep butcher. So the third topic, let's jump to that, it's security and criminality. As you see, they're all linked quite much. Filthy, tidy up, woman is fair game. Filthy and tidy up. Interesting thing for the elections in 2017. The AfD framed the other parties we have in Germany, the democratic parties, as Altparteien, old parties. So they tried to label them as old, not modern anymore, not up to standard, that we should put them away, we should get something new going on. They said they're filthy, and we are coming to tidy up the country. So this whole idea of hygiene frame, we call it the hygiene frame, something is untidy, something is filthy, and I'm coming to tidy up, is the idea they try to link to their program. The fourth is elite, state and government, deaths of Merkel. When we had incidents in Germany where people got killed, for example, through a terroristic attack, the AfD would call the people who died deaths of Merkel, because they would say, Merkel let in the foreigners killed our people, so they are the deaths of Merkel. This is a very, very terrible way, of course, to set a frame, and it's a very anti-democratic framing of something, but it's happening. They call who belongs to the elite very much is, of course, the media. The media is really bad. We know that frame and that story from Donald Trump, and I guess from other countries as well. And they call them the lackeys of the establishment. They're just writing what they want. They belong together. They're not free and detached from them. And there's no freedom of expression in this country. This is again and again said, because right-wing populists in this country think that freedom of expression means you can say anything to anyone. It's a very wrong idea of freedom of expression, but however, they haven't learned it until now. And the last big point is gender policy and role models. So yeah, there's this whole idea of there can only be men and women, and men have certain criteria or have a certain identity and way of being, and women have a certain way of being, and anything who claims to be in between is not right, is not normal, and is not really accepted. So I believe that it's important to know what the main topics are and what the corresponding language is. Because one of the things KLEINER FÜNF really tries to make clear is do not use right-wing populistic language. You again and again repeat the frames of them, you feed the picture, you don't get out of the logic we talked about before.
What do you mean by women as fair game?
Oh yeah, the idea of women now, blonde German women are a fair game, which means they can be hunted easily. We send them out, they're not secure anymore, foreign men attack them, abuse them, etc. Yeah. Okay, I guess I can jump this maybe. This is just I can go to it very quickly. This is just a summary of topics of their program here in Germany. There's an international isolation, the spectre of mass migration, Islam as the boogeyman, boundless deregulation, and unsocial policies against people who are the weakest. So they claim to be one of them. They claim to be for the people who are socially weak, for example. But if you read the program, you find out pretty much that they're not. They're not social strategies. And if they are social ones, they're coming now a little bit in Saxony, which is a federal state in the east of Germany, then it is a racist social interpretation, which means it's only for Germans. Racist family policy, no equality, extreme right-wing culture, which they support and accept in a way, militarization, and last thing, human-made climate change is seen as an invention. So it's not real, it's not true. There are the right-wing populists of Germany, and it's not the same in every country in Europe, are claiming that there's no man-made, woman-made climate change. The history, real quick. In 1983, we had a right-wing populist party called Die Republikaner, the Republicans, and they came into several federal parliaments. Nowadays, they only hold 0.3% in Baden-Württemberg, which is a federal state in the south of Germany. Some people refer to them again and again. I hear that a lot, that they say, oh, I remember when we had the Republicans. Yeah, this phenomena went away again. It will be the same with the AfD. My opinion is it's not the same with the AfD, and I don't think that it helps us a lot to compare them. Because the Republicans got very shortly into some federal parliaments, and the AfD nowadays is in every single federal parliament we have. They are in the European Parliament and in our national parliament, so they're pretty established already, even though they don't claim to be. And they are fairly better, more organized. They have more money, they have more people behind it, and they have allies outside of the parliamentary structures. In 2013, the AfD, the so-called Alternative for Germany, was founded. And in 2014, just a year later, they won seats in the European Parliament. They were pretty much an anti-Euro party at that time. So they started off with being against the Euro, coming from the Euro crisis, and making hate speech against Greece mostly. And in 2015, the administrative, as I would call it, and others call it the refugee crisis, led to a resetting of the agenda of the AfD, and they totally jumped on the topic of being anti-migration, anti-Islam, and that gained them a lot of sympathy, unfortunately, in our country. So 2017, we had our national elections, and the AfD reached 12.6% and entered the parliament as one of the biggest parties. Since 2018, the AfD is represented, as I said before, in every regional parliament in Germany, in the European Parliament, where they just reached 11%, as we will see later, and 12.6% in the national elections. So this is the European elections from Germany. This gray part you see in the east of Germany at the map is where they won districts, where the AfD won the districts. So what is interesting to see here is that if you talk about the absolute votes and winning district mapping, you will see that it's pretty much a problem of the east of Germany. It's a debate which is currently going on a lot. Is it a problem of the east or not? Well, obviously, it's not a problem of the east only. There's so much right-wing populism going on in different parts of Germany as well. However, if we talk about the absolute votes and the maximum of votes agreeing to their program, we can see by the votings of the European elections and the votings before that most people from former East Germany are voting for them. I guess you know about the right-wing populists and their successes in Europe. This is a map from September 2018. So Denmark, which you see up there, has not voted yet. I mean, they voted a couple of weeks ago, as you know. And the dark part down there is Austria, the Freedom Party, which is still, or now not anymore really, but who was ruling the country with Kurz. I was saying before that difference we have at the AfD or with the AfD and the Republicans before is that they are not only in parliament, it's not only in politics or parties where they're represented, but we talk about a support, and you were talking about this, a normalization in different parts of society going on where they're accepted and their ideas are spread. So it's in parliament, it's a trade union. There's a trade union called Zentrum Automobil in Germany, and they're founded by right-wing populists, and they don't have that many members by now, but they're getting stronger. In journalism, of course, there are a couple of books and magazines, newspapers, which are right-wing populists, and associations, of course, in social media. Oh my God, social media, you all know that. I mean, it's, there's a lot of right-wing populism going on and even more extreme ideas. So now we reach the strategy of Kleiner FÜNF or even some others. So I'm going to talk about some strategies on how to deal with right-wing populism now and talk to you about radical politeness. So what Kleiner FÜNF is doing or did ever since 2016 is that we motivate, support and try to network for people who are against right-wing populism already. So our target group are not right-wing populists. Our target group are people like you and others who hear something right-wing populist by their family, for example, by their colleagues, by their flatmate, and they don't feel well. They feel like there's something wrong, but they don't know how to say, how to react, what to say. So those are the people we're working for. And we support them with our material, which are films, share pics, quizzes, games, etc., in order to talk to non- and protest voters or right-wing populists around their personal and private sphere, in order to make them change their mind. So what strategies do exist to counter right-wing populism? Many, and I have not all of them on the wall right now. But there's the idea of attacking, right? Attacking back. There's the idea of humor, making fun of them. There's the idea of blockage, that you say we block your movement. We block you physically and we block you also mentally. There's the idea, I told you before, the guy who told me, yes, I found a strategy I'm ignoring. Well, there's people who say we just need to ignore them. They're going away by themselves. There's some people in Germany who think that they will attack each other that much to an extent that they will actually disappear one day again. I don't know why people think that, but it happens. And there are people who think that we should treat them equally because they say they are democratically elected. And there we come to a very interesting point, because there are two differences. There are people who are democratically elected, yes they are, and behaving democratic. Those are two different things. And the AfD is democratically elected, but they do not behave democratically. So some people mix-mash that up and say, well, they're democratically elected, so we should treat them just like the other parties, and if you don't like them, you should have a nice statement and a nice debate, but that's it. And there are some people who say we have to show understanding. When we say show understanding, listen, or show interest, we talk about voters, not about the politicians themselves. So especially after the national elections in Germany 2017, there have been a lot of journalists and social civil society groups who said, okay, we need to get out there and listen to the people and understand their fear, understand their understandable emotions behind their vote. Well, there are official statements. This is mostly referring to firms and corporates. So if there's a corporation, or you were telling me before, hotels sometimes, which give out official statements saying we think this is racist or this is not okay, and this is our official statement that we not support those ideas. And then they just go on and work and do their daily business, but they put out an official statement for once. And there's radical politeness. Oh yeah, I just have the sentence that if whatever strategy you choose, there's a conscious handling on right-wing populism, depends on the context. So what is the context when you meet someone who has right-wing populist ideas? So about the humor. I think that humor only works online. If it actually works, then only online. And I think it only works with people you don't know. And I think that there's just one major and legitimate motivation for using humor or share pics, which is supporting the one who is attacked. So let's say there's a person who is attacked by a racist, and I'm commenting underneath with a share pic, making fun of the person who attacked. Then I'm taking a side for the one who has been attacked. I'm trying to protect that person. That is mostly the motivation, but it does not lead to any dialogue or to any discussion or to anything like that. There's the blockage. I'm just going to give you two examples. The AfD was doing this march last year. They called the Women's March, and they tried to look like feminists. And they walked through Berlin, and they wanted to walk through our national symbol, which is the Brandenburger Tor. And there were people who said, no, we're not going to let them walk through it. And they sat down, made a blockage, and stopped them from walking through. They were successful. So this is a physical blockage. There's also other blockages. For example, this is the theater in Zurich, and they had a panel discussion on political issue, and they had the AfD invited, and they received, before the event, a lot of critiques saying, how can you give them a stage? And then they actually, how do you say, disinvited them? Like they sent them a letter and said, by the way, we don't want you to come anymore. And this is also kind of blockage, or you could say maybe intellectual blockage, or you're denying the dialogue, and this giving a stage is mostly one of the slogans we use. Yeah, the listening strategy, we talked about that before. That was we with a couple of friends in September 2017. We rented this beautiful bus and we drove around Germany, and we stopped on marketplaces. We had free coffee and drinks and food, which always works, right? And people came and sat down, and we didn't have an agenda really. We just sat down in order to talk and listen and understand. And especially, but not only, in the eastern side of Germany, where people have life stories which I honestly, I don't know many things about their history and about what they experienced and about the emotions which they have. So this is what we did, and we listened a lot, and I guess it's a good thing, but you know, sometimes it also, for example, I sometimes question what comes after. So you listened and you collected and you understood, but what do you do with that knowledge? What do you do with that understanding? And I criticize that a couple of groups or a couple of initiatives don't really take that second step, which is very important. I said before that the handling depends on the context. So are we talking about a person confronting you as a politician, a voter, or showing morally sympathy? So it's a difference if I meet Alice Weidel now walking back home and talk to her, or if I meet my uncle at a family dinner. So is it, that's a big question. And the second one is it public or private? Are we standing in a bus full of people and somebody attacks someone else verbally? It is a different reaction as if I'm alone with a person in a room. It is a difference whether it is online or offline, and whether it is a professional situation. I sometimes talk to and work with people who tell me that they have this right-wing populistic encounters at their work. And if it's a hierarchy, if there's a hierarchy, for example, it's your boss, it might change your reaction, right? It might change you on how you talk to him, if you encounter harshly or not, if you actually say something or not. So this is actually things people deal with, people experience every day here. It also makes a difference when we talk about sensibility, of course. Has anyone directly attacked a president? Do you personally know the person? Is it your father, or is it someone you don't know? Is it a provocateur or an uncertain person? So KLEINER FÜNF says there are different types of people you talk to, and the strategy you use in order to talk to him or her refers to the type he or she is. A provocateur is someone else as an uncertain person, full of fear, not sure, or someone who merely shows a blank hate. It's also a different kind. So what does radical politeness mean, finally? Radical politeness means to hold heated discussions respectfully, to acknowledge differences of opinion, look for commonality, and therefore to bring your own democratic position forward. To counteract hate and exclusion actively, this is what we understand under radical politeness. If I meet someone, and I had it a couple of times, who I personally know, and he or she brings up a right-wing populistic idea or statement, I don't react harshly. I don't just smack back verbally, but I usually do the very first thing, which is asking questions. And the question which helped me the most until now is not asking, how could you, starting with how could you, but rather with, since when do you feel like that? And then we really quickly get to events, to actual situations, and not like get away from facts you think to know from some random homepage or a YouTube video, etc. But so I'm trying to ask people, since when do you feel like that? Have you felt differently before? What may change your mind? Could you imagine that I experienced it differently, and why do you think we have different experiences on that? This is what I usually do, and I try to show respect at all time, even if my inside, and you can imagine how it is, because I guess you have experienced that as well, is burning, and I'm going like, what the heck? I'm trying to stay cool, I'm trying to slow down, and be respectful. Acknowledging differences is a very crucial point. Differences of opinions, of course. I mean, it is okay to have different opinions on what some people call the refugee crisis. It is not just right-wing populistic right away. And I guess that we, as much as it might hurt us, as Democrats, we have to understand that there's a wide democratic spectrum. There can be very conservative people who you don't share your opinion with, or very leftist people who you don't share your opinion with, or liberal or traditional, or whatever, and that shall be all right, because that is democracy. You have to try to understand after a while where the thin lines are between, for example, conservatism, and right-wing populistic ideas. So there are 5 practical tips which I tried, and I don't think I did it well, but I tried to translate into English. Stay calm in order to steal the thunder. Dig deeper. So if somebody gives you an argument, you should just dig deeper and say, look, where does that come from? Since when do you think that? Are you sure? Do you think that situation could be different if other people are involved? Would you, dig deeper, try to understand what is behind that. Mostly, at least in Germany, the discussion is quickly coming to an end because the person is like not used to be asked questions and go deeper. Justify your point of view and demand the same from the other counterpart. I sometimes, when I have very heated discussions, I just go like, okay, can we make up some rules for our discussion now? Obviously, we're really far from each other. So how about you let me talk to the end? I let you talk to the end. I will justify my point of view and tell you where it comes from. You will do that. And then, who should say no? I'm not going to stick to those rules. Mostly people are like, okay, fair enough, let's try. And then this is what we're doing. Sometimes in Germany, I'm curious to hear if that is the same in the countries you're coming from, right-wing populists tend to jump from one point to the other within one breath. They're like, it's unbelievable. It's almost a thematic sport, I would say. I mean, they start a sentence with talking about how women are chaste, then in the middle of the sentence, they change to the European Union stealing all their money and whatever, ending with how bad the media is and how they're lying. And I'm like, oh my God, let's start with the first point. Let's talk about women and security. What are you? A man. Okay, how about asking me as a woman, And then we try to slow down, make up rules. Weight your words. We talked about the right-wing populistic wording, right? That's basically what we mean behind it. Don't adapt the words or question them. If somebody uses a frame, question the frame, talk about the words. Let's talk more about wordings and framings and what is behind them. Pay attention to the way how your counterpart speaks and support persons who are affected by right-wing prejudice around you. Acting instead of reacting, very important as well. Represent your topics and cancel the conversation if your counterpart is only swearing. So it is helpful sometimes to go to another category, for example. If somebody's bringing in a category talking about how bad, I don't know, a certain religion is, I'm going to introduce a new category, for example, a judiciary. And I go like, okay, we could talk about whether people have the right or not. And then it becomes pretty clear that they do. And then we can talk about how you feel about that people have that same rights. The three types we distinguish is, as I said before, the uncertain or the insecure person. So sometimes they start with, well, the AfD have some points. Sometimes they're right. Not everything is bad. Not everything is wrong. And we try, our strategy with the hints we give online is trying to be thought-provoking and break that logic cycle, you know, and go into another category. Pit oneself against the provocateur. The provocateur is usually the uncle on the family party who goes like, ha ha ha, and then he just gives out like a random statement which is thought to be funny but actually pretty much hurting. And you can sometimes counter these provocateurs by using humor as well, in order to like deheat the whole discussion. But mostly what works is dig deeper, hold them, like catch them by the words they say, and make sure that he or she reflects whether this is actually meant, because this is the most successful point where you can break them. Yeah, the last one, and we want to make that very clear, is that there is no tolerance towards misanthropy. So if there's someone who clearly shows hate, racists, sexists, etc., things, we don't mean as radical politeness to say like, oh, fair point, let me reply mine. No, this is not what we're saying. We say you can cut that clearly, you should clearly make a point, but we just say that usually you don't need aggressivity and brutality yourself in order to counter it. You can try to make it a bit more smooth, but you should be clear on that, of course. Before I was at KLEINER FÜNF, a couple of years ago when I was in my bachelor studies, I was a harsh defender of gender topics, quite strong feminist, I would say. And I had a very dear friend, I still have him, and he told me, Paulina, whenever you meet someone who doesn't have your gender views, you're sitting on your gender tracker. Tracker is those big machines they have in the land countryside, you know, for making the field go, I don't know, what is it called actually? Tractor. Yeah, he said, Paulina, you're sitting on your gender tractor. You know, you're just going over the man who just made the statement and you really kill him and then you're like, job done, and you go home. And he was so right. I was not radical polite at all. I didn't care who's around us, if it's a party or if it's someone's birthday. I was just like, that was wrong, and I just came out with my statements. So I'm telling you this because it was important for me to realize, and thank God I had a good friend who told me the truth, to realize that I'm not getting far with my tractor. I'm not pleasing myself. I'm not helping the atmosphere or the person who invited. And I clearly, and this is the most important point, didn't change the mind of the person I mean to correct. So nowadays, I'm trying, and I'm still a feminist, of course, I'm trying much more to ask questions again, to check out the situation. Am I right now to make my point? Or should I maybe call tomorrow and say, hey, there was something you said yesterday I didn't really like, could we talk about that? You know? So I'm just giving you this example to show what radical politeness means to me, and it's not just a wording, it is actually an experience. So we're done. This was it. Of course, there's much more to tell, but I guess we can do it in our discussion all together. And yeah, if you like the context of KLEINER FÜNF or our association Tadel Verpflichtet, you can find them on the board now. Thank you very much.